here with us today because we're gonna have a great conversation because you have had an amazing career. So why don't we kick it off, Mandy? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I was raised in Dayton, Ohio. For those of you who don't know what that is, which is probably most of you, it's about an hour north of Kentucky and an hour east of Indiana. So sort of the armpit of Southwest Ohio. And I played a lot of sports growing up. That was pretty much my identity. And my main sports I excelled in were gymnastics, soccer, and softball. So when it was time to go to college and figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I knew it had to be in a sports environment. That is where I felt most comfortable. It's where I really enjoyed it. So I went to go to college, pursued a degree in sports broadcasting, and then went to Women's Sports Foundation on Long Island, which is Billie Jean King's nonprofit. And when I was there, I actually went with Women's Sports Foundation to a New York Liberty game. Life is very full circle. I met Karen Buchholz, who was leading the community relations department at New York Knicks, and she happened to be a hiring assistant at the time. So I got my first real job at the Knicks. I know for sure that MSG passed. And it's actually a hybrid role in community relations and PR. And talk about fake it till you make it. I don't think I really knew what PR was, but I dropped some lingo in my interview and I guess convinced them that I knew what I was doing. So I ultimately stayed at the Garden for almost 5 years and really made my way around the company and learned MSG Network and how the TV side works, the other sports properties, worked on boxing, college basketball, tennis, WWE. And then from there, I got my first taste of the music world by working at Fuse Music Network, which at the time was under MSG's umbrella. And when I felt the itch to go and see what else was out there, I made a quick jump to a sports fashion agency, which I learned a lot. It was not meant to be long term. And from there, I found Barry Baum at the New Jersey Nets, and I've been here for now 8.5 years. Started as a second communications employee, working under Barry, and let's see, at least you know all of this, but for those who don't know, I've been fortunate to work on so many projects, including launching the Long Island Nets and our 2K team, Nets GG, reopening Nassau Coliseum after a $200 million renovation, reopening Webster Hall after a massive renovation, the change of ownership twice, 3 CEOs, and so it's been a different job every single year, and it keeps it fresh.
Yeah, well, but we're going to dive a little bit more into that. But first, I want to hear, and our audience wants to hear, about Mandy's cool candies.
Sure. And for the record, my dad keeps asking me if this is going to come out of my bio.
Well, I think it tells a story from, I know your love, for sports, but I think I want to hear the story because at the age of 16, when you're launching something, I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I guess I was a different 16-year-old. I had to get a summer job and I didn't want to be a lifeguard, work at the Gap. Nothing wrong with any of those. But I felt like I needed to do something different. So I pitched my dad on this idea that I should drive an ice cream truck. And of course, at the time, no ice cream truck company was going to hire a 16-year-old to drive a massive truck. So I decided to buy a truck. My grandmother had recently passed away, and I thought, what better to do with the money that she left me than buy an ice cream truck? So I hired a few people, and they were some friends, and they helped take on some of the shifts, and I found a local Good Humor distributor and worked out a deal with her to get wholesale products, and began running Mandy's Cool Candies. And that lasted for, I want to say I did it for 4 summers. And it's interesting. I actually was able to find tremendous success by going to car dealerships and mechanic shops every day. No one was doing that. And I'd pull up and I'd poke my little speaker system in the front of my truck inside the garage. It would echo throughout. Everyone knew I was there.
Yeah.
And they would all come out because all these mechanics were working in the heat every single day. And this was like their break in the afternoon, was coming out to buy a $2 ice cream sandwich. So it was a lot of fun. I made a lot of friends along the way, and made plenty of mistakes. I learned from them. The first time I went into the bank to try to deposit a ton of ones and a bunch of coins, I showed up with a Lancome pouch to get for free, and I put it on the countertop in front of the bank window, and the woman looks at me and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I need to deposit this." She goes, "You can't deposit money like this." She hands me a bunch of the coin roller strips and the cash ties, and so I had to sit there for a half an hour and put all my cash together and my coins. Yeah, the basics. Certainly had some embarrassing moments, but it was great. It was great, and I think a lot of people thought I was crazy. They thought my dad was crazy, letting me do this, but ultimately it was the best lesson I could have ever gotten in high school.
Yeah, it's great. So let me ask you a question before we move on. So who was driving the truck at the age of 16? Did you have your license?
I had in Ohio, we could get our license at 16.
Okay. All right. So you were driving the truck.
I drove the truck. My friend Steven, who's now he's a congressman in Colorado, he drove my truck. My friend Alexis drove my truck, although I had to fire her after she took it into the party area of Dayton. Apparently had people hanging out the ice cream window, giving out free ice cream. So I also had to learn how to get rid of employees.
At a young age. That's great. Well, you know what? For as long as I've known you, I didn't know anything about Mandy's Cool Candies. And it wasn't until I got your bio and I was like, how do I not know anything about this ice cream truck? So thank you. Thank you for sharing. I love it. So as you've, progressed in your career on the communication side, Mandy, and one thing that you mentioned was, when you were going through the interviewing process where you weren't sure you knew anything about PR and, you used a few buzzwords. When you think about it now, what would you say the keys to success are in the communication space? Because the world is ever changing and you have to control the message for the brands that you're working on.
Well, I think there's a couple of different areas within communication. So looking first at business communication, I think it's important to truly understand the priorities of the revenue generating sides of your business. So from my role, that's specifically state for ticketing department, sponsorship, programming, all the areas that really bring in the money for the team in the arena, and really understanding their challenges, what their priorities are, what are the business they're working on, and then ultimately that helps me determine what stories I should be telling, who I should be targeting with the message, because really my role is to help support and bring in more revenue to the company, but there's no direct tie to a story and a ticket purchase, but you have to think that if you read a great story about the team or about something they're doing in the community, it'll make you want to be a part of what they're doing, buy a ticket. So I think additionally, we're also seeing community relations and social consciousness play an even greater role in a company's business. People really want to know what you stand for. And if they're going to buy you and support you, seeing that you're aware of what's going on in the world, I think is especially important. And that your values a lot of times align with what's important to them. So given that I'm also now leading the community relations department, I think it puts me in a better position to communicate our community objectives and where we stand in light of the current social justice movement, and how to position the company in light of those values.
Yeah. And Mandy, do you find, how do you keep the priorities in order since right now in your current role, you have multiple areas of the business that you juggle, right? So how do you stay focused and keep your team focused, knowing that in your world, you will always have to be a step ahead?
Hire really amazing people. That's the greatest thing. I've always looked for people that have different backgrounds than me. I've brought in people from who have great experience in fashion. I'm from the nonprofit space. I always say, if you can sell a roll of toilet paper, I want you to come. Well, it's not hard now, but before the pandemic.
Right. Right.
If you could sell a roll of toilet paper, I wanted you on my team because you could find a story in the most boring of items. And I want people that can really look for a unique angle. So I think being able to manage all these areas of the business, it's important to have a strong team, not to micromanage them, to let them use their skill sets and the reason you hired them, and let them really fly. So I really have a lot of trust in the decision-making ability of people that are part of my team, and I try to empower them to take charge. And this helps free me up to focus on areas that I know are especially important to our ownership group, or areas that are sensitive matters for the company. And it's also about prioritizing. And I think this is an area that I've had the hardest time accepting over the years. But as much as I want to do everything we could possibly do, sometimes I have to accept that we are better off focusing on areas that make a bigger impact, than trying to get every single thing done. And I think communicating those priorities to my team is especially crucial. And just it's unfortunately the way it is, but we have to give up certain potential opportunities, instead of just being mediocre at everything.
I love that. And now, how do you cultivate, relationships with now influencers, with now, YouTubers that, it's the landscape of telling the story is now grown, right? It's no longer just radio, print, and broadcast. So how do you and your team go about cultivating those relationships, especially since you are in one of the coolest boroughs in New York?
It's interesting. Somebody asked me the other day about the influencer industry, and do I think it's more important than ever? And I was actually reading about the polio vaccination in the 1950s and how they were trying to get people to trust the vaccination and to get it. So they hired Elvis to get the vaccination done in front of a ton of media. And I was like, wow, that's an influencer. That just shows you that we've been doing this for so many years. It's just now because people have the ability to broadcast their news on their own channels. And talking about it as a profession even more than we ever have. But obviously, I think PR people have been utilizing influencers for hundreds of years. So I think what makes it especially fun though in Brooklyn is that we have such incredible diversity of thought, interests, skill sets, followings, opinions, and to be able to really tap into all those different audiences and be able to hit some different demographics and viewpoints through with people. I think that makes Brooklyn truly special. And that's what keeps me excited about living here is I'm constantly like, wow, I didn't know that, or I would have never thought about it that way. And I love working with all the different types of people that our borough has to offer. And we try to do a lot now in that space. Traditional media, I think, will always carry a certain type of weight. It's very important in communicating your message in certain types of situations. But there are other spaces where influencers are crucial now for what we do.
Yeah, no, for sure. Also, too, Mandy, in Brooklyn, right? There's such forward thinkers and so many, and what I mean by that is it's such a cool place and so many great ideas come out of there that, specifically in your space and now leading the community relations efforts, I think that it just must be so exciting, right? That you I'm back. Sorry. That it's just, it must be a great time with everything that you're working on.
Yeah, I love just even walking down the street here. I get ideas. I mean, there's artwork everywhere. There's people that are doing spontaneous things on the street that I never would have thought or even had the skill set or talent to try. So I think that's what's really fun about here is what you're exposed to.
Yeah, for sure. So now pre-COVID, with everything, everything that was happening on the team side, the new ownership acquiring the Liberty, all the concerts, what stories were you most excited about telling, to continue to elevate everything that you guys are doing in the borough?
I think my favorite story this year that we were working on, and unfortunately we didn't get to complete it because of COVID, so I'm going to tell it now.
Okay.
So for the past 2 years, and I think Elisa, you worked on this in the ideation phase, but we had a jersey, a uniform on Biggie. And Biggie, as everyone knows, grew up in Brooklyn, and we really wanted to do something in his memory to continue the music tradition for youth and continue to inspire future artists. So we ended up finding a music program through the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music. And this music program had actually gone under. They didn't have the money anymore to continue it. So we worked with Nike to revive the program. And so the students all through the spring semester were actually practicing really hard, and they were going to do a surprise ambush at our final game for everyone and come in and show how far they had come over the semester and their music skills. So I'm sad we didn't get to do that, but I am most excited that these kids had the opportunity to revive their interests.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, Mandy, when you think about your career and you think about everything that you've accomplished, what would be the 3 career insights that you would share with our audience today?
So I think a lot of people say this, but I can't say it enough. And maybe it's because I'm in communications, but writing is so crucial. And I think people still can't get it. So I'm going to keep saying it. I know we communicate a lot these days in short form, whether texting, Twitter, comments, but knowing how to get your message across the right way in an email or a presentation, to me, that value is never going to go away. And I think it can really make or break for people. The second one is something that it took me a while to really learn. And I'm going to I'll explain it to you in a way that I think makes sense to people, but sometimes it takes doing the job before you get the title that matches the job. So I know people often say, well, if I'm going to do all that work and if I'm going to produce all this, I want the title and the pay to match it. But especially in the sports industry, there are more resumes than there are positions. And I think oftentimes you have to prove your value before you can expect all the recognition. And this actually happened to me when I took over the communications department in 2016. Leadership said to me, let's see what you can do first running the department. Let's see how it goes. And then we'll talk about pay. We'll talk about title after that. And I really had to trust them that they would do the right thing. They did. And I'm not saying that this company approach is the right thing by all means. You should continue to ask for what you want. Don't ever give up on that. But it's just the reality of our industry. And I think that, sometimes you got to test drive the car before you buy it.
Right. It's almost, I remember I worked with a woman many, many years ago at the NBA, and the way that she sums it up is you have to act as if, like you have to just do it, and then everything else will follow. So that's great insight.
Yeah. I guess and then I have to do a third, right?
Yes. We'd love for you to do a third.
Okay. So the last one is, as leadership, I think it's so important for us to provide more of our junior staff with the opportunity to contribute ideas and be a part of the conversation. I think that's really our responsibility. every generation is so different in how they think, their preferences, how they want to be marketed to, communicated to, and how can we expect to win them over as customers if we're not listening to them in the boardroom. So I've tried to really over the last few years make a concerted effort to go out of my way to seek the opinions of those who are at the assistant level or coordinator, because I love how they think differently than I do. And it also makes me feel a lot cooler.
Well, but no, that's awesome. Well, it's also too they're coming up differently than the way that for sure than I did, and probably the way that you did, right? I mean, they literally have grown up with technology and these phones at their fingertips. So I think that's really critical, and I love that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Well, Mandy, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. We will continue to cheer you on. I know you're going to do great things in Brooklyn and continue to do great things in the borough. So we will continue to cheer you on. And thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a great summer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thanks for everyone who hopped on. I love all the comments. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Bye, Mandy. See you later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.